Russia told its people that in a few days they were going to liberate Ukraine from Nazis that took power in the country. However, months have passed and the war has not ended yet, which puzzles Russians. In this episode of 1 week of Russian propaganda, I will tell you about the progress of the war. I will tell you, how is war going? Russian invasion of Ukraine started in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and then several parts of eastern Ukraine, with full-scale war beginning in February 2022. Well, now Russians are confused. How can Ukraine have so many Nazis that the second largest military in the world cannot cope with for months? According to Russian propaganda, it takes more time than expected because the war is actually with NATO and the US, more than with Ukraine.
Today we're not at war with Ukraine and Ukrainians, we're at war with the US-led NATO bloc. We should stop keeping up appearances as children and say that we're fighting just with the Ukrainian army. Ukraine is just one of the stages of this war. After Ukraine, the West will offer Russians a new battlefield. There are enough of them. Transcaucasia, Central Asia, the Arctic region. In Ukraine, we have a special operation, but with the West, we have a war. And as long as we limit the scope of our attention only to the territory of the former Ukraine, we will unfortunately suffer unnecessary losses and damage.
What does Russia plan to do in what they call former Ukraine? Russian propaganda promises to divide Ukrainians into three categories: the ones that are going to be liberated, patched up, and who can stay in new prosperous Russian-friend Ukraine, the discontent ones who will be sent to Poland, and refugees. And if you still have doubts, well, Russian propagandists have evidence for you that they have already started to patch Ukraine up.
Russia makes every effort to bring lots of construction equipment. With the military advances, Ministry of Emergency Situations immediately comes in and restores order. Our construction companies immediately begin to work there. We're trying to improve people's lives instantly, to make them feel and realize that this suffering is over.
Russia surely doesn't need to patch itself up. Russian infrastructure authorities are already done with Russia. They're already done with other territories annexed by Russia from other countries, such as Abkhazia and South Ossetia annexed from Georgia. They now must extend a helping hand to Ukraine. Unfortunately, not all Ukrainians are going to be as lucky. Some will have to be refugees.
British authorities want to send refugees to the Estonian cruise ship Victoria, which is docked in Edinburgh. The cabins on the ship are smaller than prison cells. It characterizes their attitude towards Ukrainians pretty well.
Let's compare those prison cells to some random housing in Russia. What would you choose? To achieve Russian plans in Ukraine, they still need to defeat their main enemy, the US.
Americans have a satellite with a very large antenna that can perform electronic reconnaissance. Approximately 14-meter antenna is deployed in space, and when satellites pass, they crack our air defense systems in order to subsequently strike. The agglomeration of Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka, Bakhmut, Soledar, Siversk. This circle is the concept of fort cities developed by American strategists. It means the cities themselves represent fortified areas with a developed road system between them through which troops can be transferred. The entire civil group of satellites is engaged in remote sensing of the Earth in the optical range, in the infrared, in the radio mode. Everything is now involved. The US government buys these pictures for armed forces of Ukraine and then corrects the strikes of their high-precision artillery, where an American soldier is assigned to each and every HIMARS.
Americans apparently find it challenging not only physically, but also mentally to fight against Russians. They even developed PTSD, which according to Russian propaganda was invented just for Americans anyway.
Americans say they've never fought such an enemy, with such speed and with such an impact on them. We even began to respect Russians, they themselves say it. They also say, this is such a new experience for us, we've never fought with Europeans. These people are like us. It's very difficult for us to decommunize them. We're used to fighting mercenaries from other countries such as Africans. The shock they receive, the so-called PTSD after participating in the war is so big that even full-time psychologists of the American army are not able to get them out of this condition.
All of this can sound ridiculous, but we need to keep in mind that thousands of Ukrainians have already died in this war, just because they are Ukrainians. Behind every new claim about Western involvement in the war, Russian propaganda justifies their mass killings in Ukraine.
The Kiev regime tried to pass off Russian attack on House of Officers in Vinnytsia as a strike on civilians. It turns out at the time of the strike there was a meeting held between the command of Ukrainian Air Force with representatives of foreign suppliers of weapons. All participants of the meeting were killed.
All of those claims naturally lack any further details, as the fewer details they present, the lower the likelihood their own lies will trip them up. Why on earth would Vinnytsia, a relatively small city in the middle of the country, be chosen as a destination for such a meeting? Was there anything else destroyed, like this medical center? Why would this meeting take place in House of Officers, which is nowadays used as a concert hall? Here's a video from that concert hall where Eurovision winner performed. Does it look like a proper venue for such meetings? Russian propaganda doesn't tolerate common sense. It creates a convenient target, in this case NATO or the West, which they need to destroy, and all their atrocities are put forward as part of those tasks. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think American 14-meter antenna is going to continue causing Russian troubles? How do you think Russians react when they notice fakes about what Russia actually does in Ukraine? Thank you for watching and see you next time.